to go. And what would be a better topic to discuss about than developer communities on such a conference? So today we have Rajiv Rajan from Atlassian, Angie Jones from Developer Relations, Scott Hanselman from Developer Community, and Sead Ahmetovic, who is the CEO of WeAreDevelopers, and they will talk about the power of developer communities. So welcome on stage, Angie, Rajiv, Scott, and Sead.
So, hello, and thanks for joining us at this short panel. So the next 30 minutes, we are going to talk about the power of developer communities. And I think there are no better people to talk about this topic than my guests today, Angie, Scott, and Rajiv. I would say very big names in the developer community scene from different aspects and different areas. And I'd like to start, Angie, with you. I think we've met the first time in 2017. You've been one of our keynote speakers at WeAreDevelopers conference, I think it was called back then, and in Vienna. And I already back then had the feeling that you're kind of super engaging with the people and the developers and the tech experts who are in attendance. So what does developer community actually mean to you? Like, how do you define it for you, and how did you find the passion to go into that direction, given that you are actually also kind of a big tech expert, so you could have chosen a lot of different directions?
Yeah, so I think a lot of my beliefs around developer communities are based all the way back when I went to college, and everyone in the class, none of us had experience with like computers or computer science or programming. And so we just kind of bonded to all figure it out together. We would do homework assignments together. We would help struggling developers. And I think that really stuck with me, even going into the workforce. And so I remember when I first got actively involved in the external developer community, and that was when we were trying to hire developers, and they didn't necessarily have the skill set. Everyone we were interviewing they weren't as sharp as the people that were on the team. And so we wanted to give back to help other developers, to share what we were learning internally with the external developer community. And I think that translates, globally, where developers, they might all be interested in a certain technology or a certain tool, a certain product, and they kind of form this community of let's help one another, let's win together.
Okay, thanks. Scott, I think you are one of the best-known developers worldwide, given your track record and also the time that you're actively engaged with people all around the world. What made you become active, and more kind of outgoing with the messages that you share, and also shaping like kind of the narratives, becoming an opinion leader, and these kind of things? Is it something that an employer was asking you to do, or is it something that you created a passion for yourself? Because you're also kind of creating and shaping that field.
In 1984, my parents were told by a teacher that I had a knack for computers, and my dad sold our van, and I came home one day and there was a Commodore 64 there, and one of the older gentlemen across the street saw that there was this Commodore 64 and I was doing Commodore stuff, and said, "You should join our user group." And we would hang out in the basement of a church and copy floppies and, pirate software in the 80s. But it was the immediate sense of like, "Ooh, have you heard the news about our little group? Come and hang out." So community, whether it's woodworking or religion or any club, if it's hey, have you heard the news? Have you heard the news about distributed identity? Have you heard the news about the cloud? Have you heard the news about Jira? Those are all people who are so excited about something that they're overflowing. And since I was immediately welcomed by the community, I've always, for the last 30 plus years, wanted other people to feel that excited about something. So my style of developer community about external advocacy has always been, have you heard the news? And I wanted, come join us. We're going to talk about this thing, and it's going to make you feel more powerful. And I want everyone to have that feeling of power that I got back in 1984.
It's a very nice story. We'll come back to that later on. But first, Rajiv, as a CTO of Atlassian, you actually kind of, as an organization, have a large developer community already that is probably built around the product and Jira and so on. But what defines developer communities for you personally and for Atlassian as well, as you are doing a lot of knowledge stuff with the people and helping other organizations, developers become more productive. What does it mean for you personally?
Yeah, sure. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. So look, for Atlassian, I think Jira sort of organically built a community. Just the very fact that every engineering team, software team was using Jira automatically sort of organically sprouted a community of people and almost sort of passionate people about Jira. So that's the thing about our communities that we find is people are super passionate about it. And in fact, I was just chatting before the conversation that there's a Jira community in Berlin that's having a beach party on Friday. So that's the sense of community and bondedness people have around Jira. And we've really leaned into it over the years. Atlassian has been around for 20 years, and we've really grown our communities, and it's a big part of our ecosystem and the way we think, to the point where anything that's built in Atlassian is built on the Atlassian platform, and we make it a point that first party double equals third party. So we want to make it so that anyone can build on the Atlassian platform and build an app that sort of integrates with Jira in the different Jira workflows. And so that's been just a natural thing for us from the beginning. More recently, we built something called the Marketplace, where you can build an app and you can do what's called the build, distribute, sell flywheel. And so we have been really successful in terms of money, about $4 billion of GMV through the Marketplace, of which $3 billion has gone back to the app developers. So we make it really easy. If you're an app developer, you want to build your own company, you can build an app in the Atlassian Jira ecosystem and build a good business out of it. In fact, we have 5,700 plus apps in the whole Atlassian Marketplace ecosystem, 20,000 developers. That's a huge, huge community. To put that in perspective, my whole engineering team is about 6,000 engineers. So that's like 3x, 4x number of engineers outside of Atlassian who are building things that integrate into the ecosystem and things like that. So good business value, good community, good passion, and that's something that's really important for us in Atlassian. On a personal level, look, I was an intern in Windows 95, 1994, 30 years ago. I still remember the passion we had in Microsoft back in the day with the Win32 API, and it was really, really exciting to be able to contribute to the API and then work with developer community on using the API, building apps and things like that, whether it was Windows or anything else. And then I was at Facebook for a few years where things like React and open sourcing things that we did at Facebook was an important part of what we did there. So I've always been very connected as a developer myself, very connected with building code and then making that available through different forms to different communities.
Oh, thanks. What does one has to do to be invited to the beach party?
You need to open a Jira ticket.
That's a good one.
That's a good one, right? Okay, good. I mean, you already tapped a bit into the topic, developer communities and especially developer relations. Like we see so many new people coming into the tech ecosystem, developer advocates, developer relations, companies obviously build whole departments around that. And I often find it's hard to find the balance of what are the business goals and what are the true kind of values and the true stories that you want to talk with developers with. So what is your take on that, Angie? Like, how do you find the right balance of, like, you obviously have a business goal behind every company, but still you want to be perceived as a part of the community and create additional value for the community without being like a salesperson?
Yeah. I have a good example of that. So I founded Test Automation University under the company that I was working for at the time. And so this university was an online virtual university where we have courses for anyone who wants to take them absolutely free. And the company sold commercial products. So this idea, I ran by them, and, you have the business folks who are kind of like, why would we do that? And, I had to sell them on the power of developer communities. Within 2 years, we were able to grow that community to over 100,000 developers, right? Who now have an affinity towards the company. Because look at all of this value that you have provided to me before I've ever touched your tool, right? So there's something in there for the business as well. It can be a win-win situation for the developer community as well as the companies.
Okay, Scott, what would you say?
I've always felt that products, I believe in product-led growth. And I figure if someone's not using your product, either they haven't heard about it, or they've looked at it and identified something about it that didn't meet their needs. So a developer advocate is supposed to find out what would have met their needs and take that back to the engineering team and the PMs to go and change that, or let people know, have you heard the news about this particular product? I don't feel like products need to be marketed. You just need to hear about it. And once that word of mouth starts to happen, then you're gold. So Angie's example right there is an education example. They'll buy the product if they just simply learn about it and understand it. So she empowered thousands of people. They got a natural affinity. The challenge from the business perspective is, how do you say mind share as an OKR, right? Using Jira as an example, that's a word like Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand, Xerox is a brand, but it's become a verb. Even people who don't run Jira open Jira tickets because that word has become such a powerful kind of a word. You want Test Automation University and the company that you work for to raise to that level where it is its own verb. Your product takes over the verb in the space.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. What do you think about many young people kind of wanting to become a developer relations engineer or developer relations person as a first step in their career without having any kind of prior knowledge of technology or engineering and so on?
I definitely want to hear what Angie has to say about this because I know she's got opinions, but I think that there is a false glamour created by social media. Social media is algorithmically designed to make you feel bad about yourself, to make false comparisons. So if your DevRel team is known for tweeting that they're in the Diamond Lounge at Delta and their Instagram is filled with pictures of food and parties, I'm sure there's going to be great parties and stuff that'll happen at WeAreDevelopers. If that's the primary output of the team, it sends a narrative that DevRel is a party job, and I think that's a false narrative. I think it is an empathy job where one needs to understand the customer because they have been the customer. I was a customer of Windows and .NET before I joined. I was an open source person before I helped build open source at Microsoft. So I needed 15, 20 years in my career before I could become an effective, developer relations person. I would not recommend it as your first job out of school because I don't know how one could build the empathy until they've closed a lot of Jira tickets themselves.
Yeah, so it's an empathy job. Would you agree?
Yeah, look, I'm with Scott on this. I'm pretty old school when it comes to being a developer. I think you have to cut your teeth in the first few years, going deep, writing code. I remember writing code in the Windows kernel, and I would finish my job and then come back in the night and just literally browse through David Cutler's code, to see how the kernel is written and such. I think when you build that foundation, after that, you can keep building products, or you can go into DevRel, you can do whatever you want. But that first few years, really writing a lot of code yourself, going as deep as you can, understanding how things work, I think that's the core foundation.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I'll add a different perspective there. So I definitely agree with this, and I think that that's been a huge advantage for me personally. Is like I worked as a software engineer to the highest level of that before ever going into DevRel. So I've seen some things, However, I do welcome fresh perspectives as well in the space. And so I'm going to pick on Ebony in the audience. So Ebony is actually on my team, and she is a junior developer advocate. So she's had some experience as a developer, but not a ton, right? Now, would I hire Ebony, no offense, would I hire Ebony as the first developer advocate and the only one? Probably not, right? But she has a team of senior and staff level developer advocates that mentor her. And she is able to bring like cool, fun, newbie type experiences that resonate with a segment of developers out there.
I want to echo that 100%, because what she's saying is we don't want to gatekeep. Like, I recognize my privilege as having worked in the industry for a long time. I don't want to say you shouldn't do this job. I think, though, that you're saying it really well, that it's there's value in having your perspective, but then you're also bringing junior people in, and they have now a fresh and different perspective. So then you're better together.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. The thing I would add to that is when you have people come in like that, maybe spend some extra time, learning different things, going a little deep. I think that'll help them in the job as well.
That's right. That's right.
How would a company, like if for example, Atlassian or let's say TBD or Microsoft in this case, if you would say, okay, you want to create your own developer community for a specific purpose with shared values and so on, how would one start? I mean, Microsoft and Atlassian, I would say, is an easier job here because you already have that adoption. But for example, new players on the market, or when you have to start it from the beginning, how would you approach that?
Oh, so I guess I'm probably best to speak at this since my division is relatively new. So I think some of that is the people representing them. So myself, I have a lot of trust within the developer community already. People know I'm not going to BS them. I'm not going to try to sell them snake oil or anything like that, right? And so I can lend some of my reputation to things that I find interesting, such as technology. Now with that doesn't mean like this is for sale to any company who wants it. I have to actually believe in the technology, the products. I have to think that they are good user experiences and good for my community in order for me to even say, hey, have you heard about this?
Yeah. And how is it with established companies, so-called established companies? Like, you need to convince other people that it makes sense to kind of shape that, or is it already implicit in because it's anyways a tech company founded by tech founders and so on?
Well, from the Microsoft's perspective, there's the challenge of existing preconceived notions.
Yeah.
What I call corporate generational pain, where someone might be a Microsoft hater, but they're only 25. They don't, they're like, Microsoft killed my pappy in the browser wars in the early 90s, and I hate you. You killed my, he was a Netscape developer, and you killed him with, that kind of generational pain is something that builds up over time. So you build trust over years, and you lose trust like that. So when we are entering new spaces, introducing new products, we have to make sure that we're not going to abandon other ones. There's whole websites dedicated to things like killed by Google. I don't want to put my name or my team's weight behind a product that I think is going to die in a year. All of those things is a constant balancing act to continue to build trust and not erode it. It's hard.
I mean, talking about Microsoft, I think at some point back in the 90s, everyone was kind of a fan. It enabled like just, in my generation at least, like...
Which part of the 90s? Because 96,
second
97.
part of the 90s.
Well,
I mean, in my generation, I think it was like, hey, it enabled me to do things, right? So it was cool. And then
it's all cool until you get in front of Congress. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like there was stuff that went down that people remember.
Yeah.
And that's challenging.
Yeah. But my point was, my question is like, there have been a time, like let's say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when the reputation was going down and down, and the frustration also with the with software engineers was very high level. The days of the Internet Explorer, and so on and so on. And I have the feeling personally, like in the past 5 to 10 years, Microsoft is again like the cool kid on the block, especially now also with the things that happened recently. What do you think was that a strategy? Did it just happen because you were at the right time, right place, at the right time with the AI stuff now? Was there some force behind that made it happen?
This is just my opinion. Yeah. I went to Microsoft specifically to open source stuff. Yeah. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was all in on open source, and I was working as a chief architect at a large series of retail banks in the United States, and I was introducing open source into highly regulated financial worlds, which was not a thing that people were doing 20 years ago. And Microsoft had a stack which was our way or the highway. Windows or it's nothing. When the cloud happened and when Satya happened, Microsoft, in my opinion, stopped selling products and started selling compute. Microsoft sells for loops in the cloud, whether it's Xbox game streaming or Entra ID or Azure. When we decided to say, you run any language you want to. You want to run Erlang? Yeah, run Erlang in the Azure cloud and we'll make it amazing for you. Here's Visual Studio Code, works great with Erlang. I just picked a language. Rust, C#. Now, I like C#. I'd love it if you use C#, but I'm not going to stop talking to you if you're a Java champion. So when we became non-denominational, the concept of evangelism, which I'm not a fan of, because evangelism means, have you heard the news about my religion? Your religion sucks. Convert to Microsoft religion. When we stopped doing that and we started saying, I love how excited you are about your religion. You want to do it in our house? Well, we have some space for you. We started selling compute. That opened everything up. That's my opinion.
And what it all boiled down to is actually embracing the developer communities, listening to what they want, and stop trying to force your way on them. So I think that sums up this panel topic, the power of the developer community. That's exactly what happened with Microsoft.
Yeah, I would add to that at Atlassian we have this philosophy, we call it open toolchain. And we basically recognize that any company has a mass explosion of SaaS apps and they're using many different tools. And our philosophy is we want to integrate in the whole toolchain. So for example, Jira built a ton of integration with GitHub. Even though we have Bitbucket, which is our own source code repo system, we integrate strongly with GitHub. And so the philosophy is any company has a whole bunch of tools from many different vendors. Jira needs to work well with everything. And so I think, to your point about the developer community power, I think that forces companies to make kind of an open decision. And ultimately, I'm glad that Microsoft took that call because it's really benefited, both Microsoft and the developer community to have that sort of open tool chain approach.
Yeah. Do you think that companies who have strong developer communities have advantage on the market?
Yeah, I definitely. I think, look, I'm a developer. So to me, like if you have mindshare with developers, they're going to write your APIs. They're going to build apps in your ecosystem. And then you get this multiplicative effect, right, where it's not just how many developers you have in your company, but it's like a whole pool of developers working on things. But I do think you want to have sort of like organic pull, right? So if you have, Scott talked about product-led growth. That was something that Atlassian, historically, we have done really well, and we still do. We have 300,000 companies that use Atlassian software. And many times we'll go to a company, and they'll have like 10 departments independently using Jira. And we're like, hey, have you all talked to each other? You're in the same company. You're all using Jira. How can you sort of, true up to an enterprise license or something? Yeah. But that product-led viral growth really helps, build that organic motion.
Yeah, I think so as well. In fact, our business unit was pretty much founded on that premise. So TBD is a business unit within Block, formerly known as Square, which is a fintech company. Everything we've done until now has pretty much been closed source. This business unit is specifically focused on open source technology. And what would happen if we actually made financial services and things like that open? And we're already seeing fintech developers like really embrace this model, which makes it powerful. It's not just about the company anymore. Now you have a movement, a community of people from all around the globe who never have to spend a dime with us, but will help move this vision forward.
Okay,
can I just add?
More than a community, it's a movement, like a developer movement. Interesting topic for next year.
Can I just add one more thing? You talked about companies that have maybe a natural advantage with the community. I think the advantage helps you, but you have to keep working on it. So for example, with Atlassian, initially we had the Jira community, but then we built this thing called Marketplace that then enabled developers to build and sell apps. In fact, the legend goes that Mike Cannon-Brooks, our CEO, developed Marketplace on a plane flight from Sydney. Yeah. And that became its own thing, right?
Okay.
And then we had to go to the cloud and do a different play with something called Forge, where you can write an app and we give you hosting and storage to go build your app and so on. So you can get an advantage, but you have to keep working on it and evolving it as the world changes.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, time flies, I see. We have 3 minutes left. I'd like to use these 3 minutes if you have any kind of audience questions. Not so far? Okay, then, 3.5 minutes left. Is there any kind of message from you to the audience in terms of if you want to contribute to whatever sort of developer community, what is the best way to do it?
I would like to see more. I'd like to see the rise of the blog. I think that we are on the edge of a flood of AI-generated spam. We've all seen Google results turn into absolute trash. Nothing on the first 2 pages has any value at all and can't be counted on. The web right now is a hot mess where there's a paragraph of text and then an animated GIF of some ad and then a paragraph of text. So you're seeing, 50, 60 megabyte home pages of websites just filled with garbage. I want the web to be weird again. I want GeoCities. I want you to buy a domain, make a blog. I want you to know that the blog, your blog, is the engine of community. I've been blogging for 22 years. I've been podcasting for over 950 episodes every Thursday for the last 19 years. Sometimes the traffic is high, sometimes it's not, but it's freaking there. And I had someone recently accuse my podcast of being AI generated because they couldn't conceive of 1,000 episodes of actual content. Yeah. I want y'all to stop putting your content and your keystrokes, your limited keystrokes, into walled gardens of giant companies that don't care about you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good message.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, of course, please go ahead.
So I spent quite a bit of my career just working at my company, kind of heads down. Yes, a star internally, but not really engaging with the external developer community. And I can tell you, once I did that, that's when my career really skyrocketed. So my advice would be to definitely seek out communities that you can be a part of. You always have something to share. even if you don't feel comfortable sharing right away, go and take. It's okay. They don't mind, right? But becoming a part of a community, this is where your networking comes in. This is where you start learning about other techniques. Because let's face it, you know you have that legacy code base at work, right? You're not exploring new tools. Nobody even wants to hear about trying to refactor or using something new. But this is how you learn about other things, is by exploring and talking and networking with people outside of the four walls that you work in.
Yeah, and the thing I would ask for you as developers and developer community is think about what AI is doing where literally I think it's going to touch every human being. Like for the first time, tech is going to touch everyone in ways that impacts their lives. And so can we democratize the developer movement where literally everybody is a developer? You know, think about low code, no code development. Can we spread that energy and that passion we have for development to like other non-technical folks? So if you know 5 people who are non-technical, teach them a little bit of code, even if it's a little bit of low code, no code that they can do with AI. To me, I feel great about like the whole world becoming developers.
Okay, so you essentially say, teach no-code code to non-coders. Yeah, it's a good entry point. Thank you so much. I would like to end on the note, and Scott, with you, I think what people really admire and love with you is not just sharing your knowledge, but actually what Angie said, listening. Like when people follow kind of your activities, you actively listen to that, what people say outside. And I think this is probably super important in order to become not just relevant, but to shape the community as well. So let's keep it with it's an empathy job, right?
That's right.
Very good word. So thank you, Angie. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Rajiv. It was a real honor and pleasure to have you here. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. It was a pleasure to have you on stage. And maybe if you have a question, try to approach our lovely speakers. And thank you to Angie, Rajiv, Scott, and Sead.
Thank you.
So next on stage, 1650, will be a fireside chat on the topic of blockchain beyond crypto, technology unlocking opportunities across various industries. So we'll be back in some minutes.